Thank you, Honorable Speaker, also for giving me this opportunity to comment on this very important bill touching on actually the corner of our work to make sure that devolution works in this country, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this bill is actually making provisions for the transfer of conditional allocations from national government's share of revenue and from development partners, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as you have guided, we are actually supposed to look into the content of the bill. And Mr. Speaker, first of all, is also to make a concern that these disbursements are coming towards the end of the financial year, Mr. Speaker. We are entering the fourth quarter next month, and that is, we have really drained the counties from spending this money to the people that we represent. All the same, Mr. Speaker, I want to comment on the county aggregations and industrial parks, which 19 counties are benefiting from this fund, Mr. Speaker. And if we go by the figures, which is 105,263,158 per every the 19 counties, Mr. Speaker. But my concern also is whether also the counties have matched this amount, because the counties were to give out 250 million, and then the national government was to give 250 million to make it 500 million. So my concern is whether also the 19 counties, how far is this amount? And I remember listening to one of the programs in Meru FMs this week. One of my constituents asked me how much has been spent in that county aggregation project, Mr. Speaker. And I'm given a commitment of at least 2 weeks to counter-check on what has come from the national government and what has been contributed by the county government of Meru, Mr. Speaker, because the reporting is that we are at 80% so far. So I was wondering whether really all this money has been submitted or committed to the project. And if you see we have 105, then it means that project can be almost now, if all the other monies were released, we should be at almost 75%, Mr. Speaker. Another issue, Mr. Speaker, is the CHPs. And as my colleague, the Senator for Nairobi, has well spoken, that you sent us to talk to the CHPs when he came at the gate of the Senate, Mr. Speaker. And I'm happy that you committed the Committee of Health to work on this matter. And Mr. Speaker, maybe in the next after recess, you will be at an advantage to know the progress from the chair of the Health Committee, because, Mr. Speaker, it becomes very disheartening that citizens of this country, this youth, can work for us and all, for our parents, for our children, for all of us, the population of Kenya, and then they are not able to get the money that they are supposed to earn from their sweat, Mr. Speaker. But I'm happy that this money, once we dispense of this matter, the money will be transmitted to the county governments so that also they can be paid. Again, also, Mr. Speaker, is also to ask myself, are the county governments also giving also their part of the bargain? Because they are sharing almost 50-50 with the national treasury. So my concern also is whether the counties are able also to match this money so that the CHPs can get their allocation, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the elephant on this bill is this schedule for the RMLA fund, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, when I served in the National Assembly, where Senator Sifuna doesn't know what happens there, Mr. Speaker, we used to have all the allocations. There was allocation for Kera, for Kura, for Kena. I know also the percentages. And also there was also allocation for county roads, Mr. Speaker. How the National Assembly, that I think the Parliament has decided not to release this money to the county governments, is a shock to me, Mr. Speaker. Because I remember actually 10% of this fund was going to the counties. Because we have county roads. The road going to my house is a county road. Mr. Speaker, as we speak, that road is very dilapidated because it's just from the highway, which is under Class B, under Kena, and then going to my house, we use now it's the county road. It cannot be funded by Kera. So if this money cannot get to the counties, Mr. Speaker, then it means I will never get to my house after these rains, Mr. Speaker. So it should be, I think, the first priority even from our courts, even though we don't direct the courts on what to do, Mr. Speaker, some matters are of national interest. So, Mr. Speaker, I wish our courts could really decide on this matter once and for all so that this money can go to the counties to make our roads. And when members of parliament start these I don't want to say marking is because I want to use parliamentary language, Mr. Speaker, as much as possible. When they go and make these decisions, looking at their personal benefits, as not looking at the entire picture, Mr. Speaker. Like in Meru, for example, we have 284 million, which should go to Meru. And this, because we have 9 constituencies, every constituency can benefit from approximately that million per constituency, Mr. Speaker. And this is good money for those roads because you need just to grain and gravel, Mr. Speaker. So I think the National Assembly should stop dreading devolution. Mr. Honorable Senator Kawira said that we have 3 enemies of devolution: the National Assembly, the Senate, and the county governments themselves. Mr. Speaker, I want to exonerate myself from his statement that, Mr. Speaker, I am a true defender of devolution. And when matters touching on devolution, especially on Meru matters, even come to this floor or even outside this floor, Mr. Speaker, I'm the first defender, Mr. Speaker. And my colleagues know my position. When I decide Meru should work, I mean it. And I usually go to the best I can so that I can see or I can feel that Meru is working. I'm a very happy person, Mr. Speaker. Even though you are taken to court, I want to digress for 1 minute, Mr. Speaker. But when you yourself, the Speaker of the Senate, your petition, there was a petition to the High Court, Mr. Speaker. I want to thank you because you really stood the ground of the Senate and said once a governor is impeached, she will remain impeached, Mr. Speaker. And I want to thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, your office, and also the clerk's office, because I know you did put a lot of effort, the Senate put a lot of effort on this matter. And Mr. Speaker, Senate has now been respected. Let me tell you for 3 honorable senators, the Senate has been respected because the decision that the Senate made has been upheld. And therefore, when I sometimes see senators trying to play around with some decisions made by the Senate, I really feel for us, Mr. Speaker, because our house shouldn't be respected. And that is what has happened exactly, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, I don't want to use a lot of time, but definitely I'll be a happy person if this bill, even though they have removed now these RMLF, Mr. Speaker, still the committee must also try to see how in future such matters can be cleared as early as possible so that, Mr. Speaker, we can have this money. Because, for example, if we have 10 billion lying in treasury and this money cannot go to the loans in the counties, cannot go to the Kera or Kena, Mr. Speaker, I think some decisions. And that is why the leadership is very important. Leadership of both houses should be discussing some of these national issues and coming to a conclusion so that, Mr. Speaker, we don't derail development in our country. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Wambua.